Who was Alexei Navalny? Was he a real opponent of Vladimir Putin, a true liberal and revolutionary, or just another Russian politician? It's a complex matter. Watch until the end to grasp the complete perspective. Navalny was a Russian opposition leader who was of both Russian and Ukrainian descent. A lawyer by profession, Navalny entered politics in the early 2000s with the Yabloko Party, a social liberal movement. Despite not strongly aligning with the party, he took on increasing responsibilities and became a prominent figure of the organization. During this time, Navalny engaged in various political initiatives, including the creation of the Democratic Alternative Youth Movement. However, in 2007, after Yabloko's poor performance in the legislative elections, Navalny proposed reforms and criticized the party's authoritarian leadership. As a result, he was expelled from Yabloko, officially cited for nationalist activities and causing political damage, though some sources suggest it was due to challenging party leader Grigory Yavlinsky. Navalny also started a blog on which he published his views and material about corruption in Russia. In December 2011, following parliamentary elections and allegations of electoral fraud, Alexei Navalny was among approximately 6,000 protesters in Moscow. After his arrest on December 5th, he was sentenced to 15 days in prison for defying a government official. During his imprisonment, Navalny's blog became available in English. Released on December 20th, he urged Russians to unite against Putin as the presidential election was coming up in 2012. Navalny had already managed to make a name for himself due to his anti-corruption and oppositionist views. Following his release from prison, reporters inquired about his plans for the upcoming election. Navalny informed the reporters that it would be senseless for him to run in the presidential elections because the Kremlin would not allow the elections to be fair, but if free elections were held, he would be ready to run. Following Putin's re-election in March 2012, Alexei Navalny faced increased political repression. He was arrested again and sentenced to another 15 days in jail after an anti-Putin rally. Despite legal challenges and searches of his home and office, Navalny's associates established the People's Alliance Party in June 2012, with a focus on digital democracy. Navalny later became its leader, renaming it the Progress Party in 2014. Participating in the 2013 Moscow mayoral election, Navalny garnered substantial support, securing 27% of the votes. However, he contested the results, claiming they were fake. Navalny continued his political activities, joining the RPR Parnas party and advocating for a democratic coalition. Despite a 5-year suspended sentence in 2017, Navalny announced his candidacy for the 2018 presidential election. The Central Electoral Commission barred him due to a corruption conviction, leading to Navalny's call for an election boycott. He persisted in his efforts, supporting independent candidates in the 2019 Moscow City Duma election and initiating the Smart Voting Project. In 2020, a constitutional referendum was held in Russia, which would allow Putin to run again for 2 more presidential terms. According to official results, 79% of valid votes supported the changes to the constitution. But as always in Russia, the electoral process often deviates from fairness. It appears that most Russian leaders adhered to Joseph Stalin's words, "Those who vote decide nothing. Those who count the vote decide everything." Navalny opposed the 2020 referendum, denouncing it as a coup. He criticized the amendments allowing President Putin to potentially serve additional terms. Throughout these events, Navalny faced physical attacks, arrests, and legal obstacles, all of which, alongside his perseverance, cemented his role as a prominent opposition figure in Russian politics. But his political activism did not stop at running for public office. Despite his legal battles, Alexei Navalny focused on exposing corruption within the Russian state. In 2008, he invested 300,000 rubles in stocks of 5 oil and gas companies, including Rosneft, Gazprom, and Lukoil. Navalny became an activist shareholder, with the aim of promoting financial transparency. In 2010, he revealed confidential documents, claiming that approximately $4 billion were misappropriated by Transneft's leaders during the construction of the Siberia-Pacific oil pipeline. He also founded different platforms, which were aimed at fighting corruption and exposing corrupt Russian officials. Navalny also published investigations regarding Dmitry Medvedev and Vladimir Putin. In January 2021, Alexei Navalny and the Anti-Corruption Foundation released an investigation accusing President Vladimir Putin of using fraudulently obtained funds to construct an extensive estate. Described as the world's biggest bribe, the estate allegedly cost over $1 billion and is 39 times the size of Monaco. The investigation also unveiled an intricate corruption scheme involving Putin's inner circle. However, as Navalny's activism and investigations gained momentum, the Russian authorities intensified their efforts to impede his progress. On the 20th of August 2020, Alexei Navalny fell seriously ill during a flight and was hospitalized in Omsk, Russia. Initial suspicions of poisoning arose due to the sudden and violent change in his condition. He was later transported to Germany for treatment, and the doctors confirmed he was poisoned with the Novichok nerve agent. Traces of the nerve agent were also found on an empty water bottle from his hotel in Tomsk. An investigation by various authorities suggested that agents of the Russian FSB were involved in the poisoning. This confirmed that Navalny had been surveilled by the Federal Security Service for years. But this is what makes Alexei Navalny a controversial figure. He identified himself as a nationalist Democrat. While he had previously taken part in gatherings of various Russian nationalist groups, he later became one of the co-organizers of a nationalist march in 2011. These groups typically align with the extreme right on the political spectrum. In 2007, Navalny co-founded the National Russian Liberation Movement, prioritizing immigration policies. During that time, Navalny released anti-immigration videos, including one endorsing migrant deportation. In a video promoting gun rights, he compares militants from the Caucasus to cockroaches and mimics shooting one who attempts to attack him. Navalny also initially supported the Russian invasion of Georgia in 2008, although he strongly criticized the military intervention in Syria and the Russian war in Ukraine. Nevertheless, he continues to be a revolutionary icon for many of those who oppose Putin. It is important to understand that democracy in Russia is not synonymous with its Western counterparts, as many Russian people tend to have profound nationalistic views. After recovering from his Novichok poisoning in Germany, Navalny returned to Russia in January 2021 and was detained for violating probation. In subsequent legal proceedings, Navalny received yet another prison sentence. Some reports claim that he was tortured and his health deteriorated in prison. Despite calls for his release, Navalny remained incarcerated. The Russian government designated Navalny's political network as extremist, leading to its dissolution. Navalny faced additional charges and trials, resulting in prolonged imprisonment. There were new reports of his harsh treatment, including solitary confinement and denial of medical care, but his legal battles continued. New charges and sentences were brought against him, including a 19-year term. Even his lawyers faced detention, highlighting a broader crackdown on opposition figures. In December 2023, Navalny was removed from the penal colony where he had been imprisoned, with his whereabouts unknown. On the 25th of December, he was discovered to be in the IK-3 Special Regime Colony, one of the harshest in Russia's prison system. On the 16th of February 2024, the Russian Penitentiary Service announced that Navalny had died at the prison after taking a walk and feeling unwell that morning. This final show of force from the Russian authorities put an end to Alexei Navalny's tumultuous saga. We will probably never know the true circumstances surrounding his death or his time in prison, but what we can certainly say is that Alexei Navalny was one of the few individuals in Russia who had the courage of standing up to Putin's regime. Vladimir Putin consistently avoided uttering Navalny's name, using various linguistic tricks to avoid voicing the name of his critic. Nevertheless, he is one of many who met their end after criticizing the regime. There seems to be a pandemic in the Russian Federation, one of falling from balconies and of casual walks that end tragically. The responsibility lies with the Russian people to exert any required efforts to halt the totalitarian regime in their nation. However, the question remains, will this ever come to fruition?